Thank you all for signing in to the Archicad 21 upgrade training, the webinar. Just a few things. We had a few people ask questions already saying they don't have 21 installed. That's fine. You can just sit back and watch. There is a recorded version later on that you can go and redo this again once you've got 21 installed and you have the files. For the ones who haven't already downloaded the files, there should be another link being posted very, very quickly with those files. So if you download those, that way you can follow on. Starting off, my name is Gareth, so you'll be listening to me for the next 3 hours. Hopefully you don't get interrupted by clients or phone calls. If you do, you all do get that recorded webinar at the end of it anyway. Starting off with a bit of news. For the ones who have sort of been living under a rock, remember Central Innovation purchased CAD Image last year, around July. So, still business as usual. So if you're wondering who this Central Innovation is, Central Innovation purchased CAD Image, still offering Archicad, the support, the trainings like this, but now we can offer a little bit more hardware. If you want to get into the manufacturing software like SolidWorks, there's also other AEC software, Celebri, DDS CAD. So if you need to buy one of those or looking or want to know more information about it, contact us and we can forward you on to the right people. With that, staff movements, so the three directors, Tracy, Campbell, and Andrew, all three have moved on. Campbell is in Budapest working at Graphisoft. Tracy is in America working for Graphisoft America, and Andrew Ecker is still in the South Island working with a GIS company, just a little startup, so he's really enjoying that. In the technical team side of it, both Sela and Soto have moved on. Sela's gone to a startup app company, so outside of architecture altogether. And Soto has gone to Spain to learn Rhino and Grasshopper and other algorithmic software. Hopefully one day he'll come back and teach us all how to use that. New staff, one of the new staff members people should be aware about is Fiona Wylands, who is the operations manager here in New Zealand. So she oversees the business on the architectural side and the manufacturing side. So if you hear from her, say hi and all of those things. The files, so for these files, if you want to see them later, they will be uploaded up on mycadimage.com, which will include this PLN, the one you guys have got now already, and the other files needed for this training, along with some links to YouTube videos and even the CAD image tools, getting started videos, and even the past upgrade training videos. There's also going to be a BIMX file and also a PDF of this also. For the ones who are looking to or haven't installed already, just check your system specs. The recommended software to run Archicad is either your Windows 10 or 8.1 or Mac Sierra or El Capitan. There's a lovely little link at the bottom of the page that you can go and check the website to see if your computer meets those specs. There are reports of people who have got Archicad 21 running on Windows 7 and even on the older Mac OSs. Just be aware it is unsupported. So if you have any issues, Graphisoft's response will be, does it happen in the later OSs? So just be aware of that. Some people haven't even been able to install it on Windows 7. So if you're one of the lucky ones who haven't had an issue with 21 on Windows 7, cool, keep going. The other one is for the Mac people who want to update to High Sierra. just check the website first, the tech notes, just to make sure everything seems okay. This year it seems to be better than previous years, but still just double check that website. Just be aware if you do upgrade to High Sierra that you won't be able to run older versions of Archicad. They're unsupported also. So if you still got your old projects in 18 and 19, you don't want to migrate them to 21. Hold off on updating your Mac software. A couple of changes with the New Zealand template this year. Just remember, when you install the New Zealand version of Archicad 21, you're going to have the New Zealand template. You can either get the New Zealand version from the disk that was sent out to you, or you can download it from mycadimage.com. And on there, that's the New Zealand version of the software. A few changes, one of them being the toolbar along the very, very top. Currently my window doesn't display that, it will do in a second, but there's a few little options along the top now. New ones, edit select, so that used to be in the info box in previous versions. Remember, it was moved in 20, it's now put up in the toolbar for 21. There's also the label selection little button where you can click on that, and that will then label those selected elements with the label that you have selected. That old workflow of labeling your door and windows, you don't have to go through the menu structure, you can just click on that now to do that. There's also a few palette options, so renovation palette, the favorite palette, surface painter, photo render settings. There's also a little mini navigator that's not to be confused with the pop-out navigator. And then also Quick Las. If you've never heard or used Quick Las, have a bit of a play. The people who do use it rave about it and say it's one of the best things in Archicad. So have a bit of a play if you've never heard of it or used it before. For those who in the past or are still doing their BIMX, their hypermodels, previously the only option for the publishing sets that was in the New Zealand template was to upload it to the transfer website. That's just been renamed because we've introduced the one called local, which saves it onto your local machine. All you have to do is specify the location, so the path. Is it on your desktop? Is it on your server somewhere, or wherever you save your projects? So if you want to save them locally, there's a publishing set there for you, ready to go. There's a new couple of tools which we're going to play with soon. One of them is the railing tool. So there's a couple of favorites in there for some railings, which you can use if you need to. They look nice in 3D. There's also a timber fence one. I'll explain that later. There's also new stair tool. So we get some favorites there as well. Couple of just out of the box, the cantilevered stair, there's a concrete stair with and without finishes, and there's even a wooden stair stringer as well. And they look lovely in 3D also. Line types, a lot of the stuff came from user feedback. A lot of people loved the stormwater and the sanitary sewer lines, but wanted more. Wanted one for electrical, one for fire alarms, water, and etc. So we've gone through, created a couple of those. We've also saved them as favorites, so they should be set to the right pen, the right layer, and the color, and ready for you to do your drawings. Little couple of changes in the pen sets for the ones who are doing their electrical drawings and using the yellow pen set. You would have noticed it was very difficult to see the yellow on the white background. We've changed that to a lovely little brown. We haven't changed the pen weights. All we've done is just change the pen color, just for the colored sets. So if you're still using the printing set, that's still going to be black. It's just the colored ones on your screen. They'll be, instead of a yellow, it'll be a brown. There's a couple of changes to the label tool this year, which we'll explain later on. We've added a few favorites. One of them is called Label. This is a favorite setup that already has your hotlink and the element ID in it. So if you were doing the door and window labels, you would choose this favorite and then select your door and windows, and then use that new label selection little button in the toolbar. Um, the other one is the label text. This one down here, which basically is just a text box. So there's no text, predefined text in there already. You just start typing that stuff out. One of Soto's little parting gifts was a wall schedule that had a 2D and a 3D view. So we've gone through and modified the wall schedule to include those. So if you're doing wall schedules and you wanted to have those 3D and 2D views on your wall schedule, here you go. If you've never used wall schedules, just remember these are already in the New Zealand template ready for you to start using. If you're already using them, feel free to modify them, delete them, remove the 3D and the 2D out if you're not interested in those things. The other one as well, for the people who do use the CAD image tools and want to have them put into the work environment quickly, the best way to do that is to go to Options, Work Environment, Apply Profile, and the CAD image profile. That adds in those tools into the toolbar for you. The slab edges, your cabinets, electrical if you have that, and along with a few others. We've moved the polystair and the railing tool down to the bottom of the design section of the toolbar, just so it's away from the Archicad stair and railing, just not to confuse people. If you don't want to do this workflow, feel free to do it manually by going into your work environment and going into the work environment again and changing all of those settings. But applying the profile is the easiest way to get those tools in once you've installed them. The New Zealand template document, this was something we didn't think people were interested in, so didn't actually produce one for Archicad 20, but from the feedback we got from people, it seems that everyone or who does use the New Zealand template do actually read these things. So we've recreated it again for Archicad 21. This should cover off everything in the template for 21 and also some of those things that weren't in 20. So they were introduced in 20, sorry, so like graphical overrides. At some point, migration, you're going to want to bring in your files into Archicad 21. Let's say you've got an old project, in 20 or 19, and you want to bring those into 21. You're going to get this migration assistant window. When this does pop up, hit the migrate Archicad library button, and that will load the Archicad library 21. It will load the migration library. It will replace, it will remove that older library. So let's say your project was in 19. It will remove the 19 library and replace those objects with the latest and greatest out of the Archicad 21 library. Later on, I'll show you why we want those latest and greatest objects. This file does have a loading library report. A few of you would have seen that when you opened your file, which is fine. There's two little errors in here, which we're going to go and fix. Coming back to this loading library report, if you've never seen this before in your life, well done. You've got a file that's pretty efficient. If you do see this, this is probably something you want to look at and get resolved. They're very easy. Duplications is one of the easiest ones. You just find the library that's being duplicated and remove it out of your library manager. If it's a missing library bits, so maybe a surface or an object, just reload them back into your project if you know where they are on your computer. If you've deleted them from your computer and from your backups, you'd have to recreate those objects and those images from scratch and reload them back into your project. But if they're missing, find them in your computer or find them in your backup. In Archicad 21, the old stair maker is no longer supported. Those stairs, when you do bring them in, they're going to become standard little GDL little objects. You won't be able to do much with them. You can change the color, change the pen that's about it. You can't change the width, can't change the tread heights or the goings, any of those other things as well. That also goes for the stairs where you've used the fills and lines and then gone through the menu structure of creating that stair, those things into a stair. They will become standard little GDL objects. One of the things you'll notice, I have a missing little dot. So that's one of those little loading library report errors, which we're going to solve right now. For the ones who have got a profile that's just a little bit not standard at the moment, I just want you to apply the standard profile at this point. So just go up to Options, Work Environment, Apply Profile, and Standard Profile 21. What will happen is your computer will do a little bit of flashing, and it's going to show you the standard New Zealand template, work environment, sorry. Once you've done that, I want you just to go up to your library manager. For the ones who haven't cottoned on, I am just going through my navigator. Go to the View Library Manager, and when you go up to File, Library Manager, you'll notice that that's in a new location that previously was under Libraries and Objects. So I'll get you to open the Library Manager. So File, Library Manager. And when this pops up, you should have down the bottom 2 warnings. A number of you might have a few more. The 2 warnings I have in here is a migrated library, so perhaps this was already migrated file and someone's deleted the library not knowing what was going on. We're going to fix that in a second. The other one is an attribute. So if I was to continue down through these things, I can click on what is missing, so this attribute would 09, and click More Info. This gives me a little bit more information about that. So that's telling me that that image is missing from a surface, and the surface is wood 0920. I'm just clicking OK on that, coming back to this little window here. Now we're going to add the migration library back into our project to fix that little stair, little missing object that we're getting at the moment. Up the top, in the middle of our screen, there's 2 little houses with an arrow on top. If you're not sure of what something is, if you hover your mouse there long enough, you get a tooltip. That little tooltip is telling me migrate libraries. When I click on that, I get this migrate library button window, and then there's a migrate library button there. If you go and click that, that will add the migration library into our file. We would go and fix the other issue, but today I just want you to click OK. The computer will do a bit of thinking. This is just loading the libraries back into our project. That loading library report will come back up again, and you should have a window like this. A few of you might have a few more. There is some workarounds we've had to do with these files to make them work across other computers that don't have Archicad installed. So you might have more errors going on. You might even have more duplications. That's fine. This is just this file to make it work in the way we needed it to. So you can close that and go to the After Stair Migration window, and we'll see that this stair is now showing and it's no longer a dot. Feel free to click on one of those stairs and have a look at the settings, and you can see that it's a very basic stair. There's no edit stair button anywhere. You can't change a lot other than what it looks like. The reason for that is we have this brand new stair tool which we'll play with soon. If you needed to modify the stair, we would say delete it and start again with the new stair tool. The next view, adding texture to library. This one here. A few of you have probably seen this checkered pattern. This checkered pattern is just telling you that object or that element is missing a surface. So we would have to go into our into our library manager and then load that image back into the project. So if we head back up to our library manager, so File, Library Manager, we're now going to fix this missing attribute. Because the surface is a one-off thing, it's only used in this project, we would embed that into our file. So at the top, where it says Libraries and Project and the Embedded Library, select the Embedded Library tab. In here, this is all the objects that have been embedded into the project, along with some surfaces. If we come down to the little chair, there's a little chair with a little up arrow. Here we would click on this button, and this will open up a browser window, so we can go to our file. Should be the Archicad upgrade training, and inside that folder there's a file called wood09-optgs.jpg. Once you've found that, click open. Hit open again, or OK again, sorry. And after your computer's done some thinking, your file then at that point will have those loaded libraries back into your project, which you can then go to the next view after surface added, and that will give you a first look at the Archicad stair in 21 with the surfaces added to it. We're going to leave that. We're just going to go on to something different, and we'll come back to that soon, and we'll show you how that would have been created in 21. Looks very complex, but by the end of this, you'll probably think it's not too complex at all. So open BIM, the next exercise, open BIM. For the ones who are being asked to do BIM and to buy a BIM software, just remember Archicad is BIM, and it is that BIM software. Some would say it's the best BIM software. Graphisoft is part of a group called the Open BIM that was founded by Graphisoft themselves, Tekla, a few others, Autodesk being one of the others as well. And the whole concept of this Open BIM is sharing your files. So sharing your 3D file as a reference. To create that 3D file, we save an IFC file, which we can then send off to our engineer, or the engineer could give us their file, and we can collaborate with those files. Those files are treated as a reference, so if there's something wrong with it, say a column is in the wrong location or the beam is the wrong size, we don't modify their model. We tell them about it, and then we get them to change their model and then give us an updated file. We would hope that they would do the same for us as well. If they had noticed that our door or a window was in the wrong location, that they wouldn't move that, but they would call us up and say, hey, look, is this in the right location? If it's not, you then go and move it. So in Archicad 20, bringing in an IFC file, there was quite a lot of steps. You'd open the file up, the IFC. In Archicad 20, you'd go through, clean up a few things, change things to layers, then save it as a PLN. Then you would then hotlink that PLN that had your IFC file into your host file. And whenever there was an update, you had to repeat those processes. And it got very tiresome, and people got sick of it and never really followed it because it was too difficult. Now in 21, you can just hotlink your IFC file directly into your project, into your host file. Just going up to the file and external content, and then placing a hot link like you would do any other hot link. We've got a little exercise which we're going to do. We've got a little IFC file that was saved or created in Revit, and we're going to bring it into our project. If you come down to the view IFC import exercise, and you should have a few grids, these little grids here. If you head up to File, External Content, and then Place Hot Link, a Place Hot Link window will appear. Up here, click on the Select Module, New Module from File, and in your Archicad 21 Upgrade Training folder, there's a file in there called the Upgrade Training strifc. If you do not see that file, down the bottom, there's the, I'm on a Mac, so it might look slightly different for the Windows people, but down the bottom, there's the file types. Just change the file types and set that to be IFC files. Once you've changed that, you should then see this upgrade training str.ifc. Select it just once, just have it highlighted, and then come back down to the bottom, and there's a translator. So it might look slightly different on the Windows. It might be the top one. The translator, we're going to change that to be the Revit structure import. So Revit structure import. So once you've made those changes, you can then click select or OK, depending on what your dialog box is. Back at the select module, you then need to go select, and then you'll be taken back to the place hotlink window. At this point, we're going to change the master layer. Instead of the miscellaneous hotlink modules, we're going to set that to be the miscellaneous hotlink str. The next option we're going to change is the elements elevation. We're going to tick the keep elevation as in the story structure. So this little button, if your file is a 3 meter floor to floor, but your engineer, he might have 4 meters floor to floor. He may have had that beam or the columns linked to that 4 meter floor, so the floor above. But when we bring it into our file, it's going to reduce the height. So if we have this button ticked, it ignores that and keeps it at the height that it's meant to be. Then click Place Hotlink. Depending on what's going on with the model from the engineer, we're probably going to get asked if we need to embed some complex little bits as library parts, which will embed into our file, so click OK. Then you get the model filter for the import. At this point, when you open those up, you get a couple of options. You can tick and untick the elements you don't want to bring in. So if you wanted to bring in the IFC beams, you would tick those, the IFC columns, and so on and so on. You can get more other options as well. So if there was slabs, maybe furniture, you'd untick the ones or tick the ones you do want. Then down the bottom, we're just going to change the domain and set that to structure. Click OK. We get this matched storing heights. So this isn't just for the hot linking, but this happens also when you're doing merging. This is where we want to match their file with our file. We can see in our file we have 9 stories, but in the Revit file, it only has 6 stories. One of those stories that our engineer hasn't cared about is the sea level and datum. They may have done all of the work for the plant and the roof structure all on the 4th floor also. Now I want to match my ground floor with their one, so I want theirs to be ground floor which then brings these stories of my hotlink to match at the right levels. Once you've done this, you can click OK. Computer will do a little bit of thinking. In this process, it will drop down your IFC file as a hotlink. Just right click outside that box and go OK. And now these elements are going to be Archicad elements. So here's a Archicad beam and an Archicad column that was all created in Revit. These also show in your 3D. If the engineer was to change the file, made a couple of changes, because it was hot-linked in, we can just update the hotlink like you would do with any other hotlinks. You go into your hotlink manager and click update, or relink it if they had a name change. So maybe the date was in the file name, so you could just use a relink. Right, sort of done with those IFCs. We're going to go on to the next tool, collision detection. For the ones who don't have any columns, who didn't bring in that IFC file we just did then, we need some columns in your file so we can do a clash detection. If you've already brought your IFC file in, that's fine. You can just ignore this for a second, but the ones who haven't, I want you to go to the view above the column thin app, select the grid, make sure it's grouped, and go to Design, Grid Systems, click the Place Grid Line Intersections, and then click OK. There'll be another palette that will say continue or undo. Just go continue, and that way it will place those columns onto our grids. Once everyone has those columns in their grids, or they've brought in their IFC file, we can move on to collision detection. So the collision detection, it started off with with MEP, so checking your MEP against your architectural. It's now sort of evolved into something bigger, so we could clash our, which we're going to do, we could see if we have any columns and doors or windows clashing. Some people, and we haven't tested this yet ourselves, but some people have actually started to put down zones in a room and do a little collision detection to see if the doors or the windows are wide enough for exits or whatever they need it to be. There's a few YouTube links out there. We're going to include that in these files, which you can then go through and try and reproduce it yourselves. In the view collision detection settings, the next view, here are the settings for my collision detection. To get the collision detection, I want you to go up to Design, and then come down to collision detection. This will open the palette, and the way the collision detection works, it's between two groups. So group 1 versus group 2. In group 1 today, we're going to have doors, and in group 2 is going to be our columns. If you wanted to, you could add extra filters also, but today we're not going to. We're just going to use a very, very simple check. Once you've set it to door and group 2 to column, click check. You'll get a report. Mine's telling me I have group 1, 101, so that's 101 doors, and group 2 is 201 columns. If you hadn't done the IFC, you might have a different value. You might have 170 or different whatever was going on. At this point, we should all have one clash and one added into our markup tool. Once you've done that, click continue. The markup tool will appear. Here's my markup tool. and it's clashed somewhere in my model. The whole clash detection tool has checked my entire model, so across all the floors. I'm not sure where it is, so in the markup and entries, it's telling me there's a ground floor. If I extend that out, there's clash 01. I'm just going to turn that on by clicking the eye and then double clicking clash 001. And that's going to take me straight to that clash and highlight it pink. Now at this point, let's say in this little scenario, the column was in the wrong location. What we can do, and this is within the markup tool, we can place a tag on the drawing. So on my plan, I'm going to tag this column. And that tag could say move column. In the comments, I could even add more comment to it. And I can even set the status. Is it unknown? Is it an error? Is it a warning? Is it an info? Maybe an error. And go add. If I wanted to also as well, that whole picture says 1,000 words thing, there's this little button for capture, and I could capture that. At this point, I could then export this out using the little export selected markups, export that out as a BCF file. We already have one here for the ones who have Revit in their office or other software that can read BCF. Feel free to open that. You can go and save it. I'm just going to hit cancel. And what happens, you go and give that to your consultant who might be using another bit of software, so Revit. He opens that or she opens that file up. And what happens is they can see your comments, they can see that image, and it also highlights in their file that column that needs to be looked at, moved, redesigned. At that point, they would then update their file, send the IFC on back to you, and you could just update it because it was hot linked in. In this case, right, our door is in the wrong location. So we're just going to move our door. So we need to select the door and just drag that or move it out of the way, away from that column. Once you've made that change, back over in your markup tool, click on Clash 001, and we're going to delete this entry. We're going to use, we're just going to hit delete elements. We're going to use the markup tool when we use the collision tool as a checklist. So once you've made those fixes, you just remove that out of the markup tool and then you do the next clash, just to keep it simple for you. At this point, I want to recheck my whole model just to make sure I haven't made any other clashes while I was doing those changes. So I'm going to hit escape a couple of times just so I have nothing selected. If I have something selected, the collision detection tool will check group 1 versus group 2 with the elements you have selected. So have nothing selected and it will select and search your whole model. So head back up to design, collision detection, and click check. And we should have the 101 doors, the 201 columns, 0 collisions, and 0 markups found. And click OK. So that's the collision detection tool. A lot of people from the 5 weeks of traveling around the country doing this in front of rooms of people. A lot of people have come to us and said, oh look, we're going to use this to check the fire exits. Some people are even using it now to even check after they've done a whole big design change, moving walls around, just to double check that they haven't left any objects or fills or anything like that outside of their model or clashing with their walls. So you could do those little checks yourself. just to double check. It's not there for the big guys. We think it's there for everybody to use, kind of like your spell check. Right, we're going to head on to some productivity tools. So if you minimize the open bin folder and head to the productivity folder, you can close your markup tool once you've done that. In the productivity tool under touch bar support, for the people who are trying to convince their boss that they need a brand new MacBook, this could be the thing that gets you across the line. There's a little touch bar on the brand new MacBooks, which is supported with Archicad 21 only. It won't work with Archicad 20 or any of the older ones. That touch bar, it just allows you to go up and down stories, open up your 2D, your 3D views. It also, depending on what tool you have selected, it will change and show the settings in the touch bar as well, like a little settings button, which will open up the settings for you. Yeah, that's just for the Mac people who are using the new laptops. Something for everybody, the Magic Wand. The Magic Wand now has a bit of a graphical feedback so we can see what is going on. If I get you to go across to your Fill tool, go to the Fill tool, holding spacebar and moving your mouse in between the boxes, you'll notice that you're getting a blue outline now. Just to give you feedback of where you're about to place that fill. I'm just going to place it here in the middle of my model. I have a blue fill. Let's try it with the 3D tool. So let's grab the wall tool. Same again, hold spacebar, and now you're getting that feedback as well. So I can see if I click on the edge of the slab, I'm getting a feedback of the walls being placed. I'm going to do it to the roof tool now, holding spacebar again, and I'm just going to move my mouse around. I'm going to have it on the edge of the wall, so I'm going to click on the edge of the wall, click, and I can see I have a complex roof, giving my builder a bit of a challenge to have that one built. The next productivity tool, dashed polylines. I could probably hear a few of you getting pretty angry down through the internet with this little error going on. This little junction. That's one whole line. And a lot of people have got workarounds to fix those little errors. Same with these. It doesn't look very, very nice with our drawings. So with the dashed polyline, if I get you to select the polyline tool, just double check that you have long dashed polyline selected and the geometry method polygon. The polygon has a new option. So if we scroll through our info box through the top here and come across down to dashed lines, there's two options. One is continuous and one is by segment. Select by segment and click on hotspot 1. Go to 2, just connecting the dots all the way back around to hotspot 5. Double click to finish it, and you'll notice that we have these nice little corners now. No more smashed screens and angry architects. Select the line on the left. Once the polyline is drawn, you can also change that later if you wanted it to be looking nice and lovely. You can click that by segment and you can get that nice little look with your lines. The multiply tool. A couple of changes to the multiply tool. Ignore the little colors here. They're just showing you that where have those 4 options gone in the new interface. One of the ones you'll quickly notice is the distribute -1 is now just a little tick box below the distribute. It's made way for a new option, increment and spread, which we'll play with right now. If I get you to select the chair down here, open the multiply tool. So for the people who aren't aware of the quick key for Windows, Control U, and for the Mac, Command U, open multiply. Our action is going to be a drag. The graphical input is going to be increment and spread. I'm going to untick pick a path. We're going to play with that very soon. So untick pick a path and set the rotation to none and go OK. At this point, my drag reference point, as my status bar is asking me, is going to be the center of the chair. I can now set this in 2 ways. I can either set it by clicking, so setting something up graphically, or typing in a distance. I'm just going to click randomly about here, and as I move my mouse out, that click has actually set my spread. So I can continue my mouse out to the other side of the screen, click to finish. Now I can have them spread. The next option, the next view, multiply along a path. I have this circle here, which is set up to look like a tree, just using the bubble. It's one of the simplest trees you can get, a circle with a bubble. It's only 2D, but it shows lovely. So select that circle. Open the multiply tool again, so the quick key again for Windows, Control U, or Command U for the Mac. The action is going to be a drag. The graphical input will be spread. The spacing this time is going to be 2000. Click pick a path, this option here, and set the rotation of copies to none. Click OK. Down on my status bar, because everyone uses the status bar, I hope, down here you want to click your path. The path is going to be this spline, this dashed line here. So clicking that dashed line will set your path, and that's now asking you to enter the reference point, the drag reference point. So it's going to be the center of my circle. And then as I move my mouse, I can either follow the path or I can continue my mouse out to the right and click to finish. And I have these trees rotating to my path. Go to the view, rotate to path. Again, I have a chair. So if we select this chair, open the multiply tool. So either the quick key, Control U or Command U. Set the action to drag. The graphical input is a spread, spacing 500. We're going to pick a path, and this time we're going to choose rotate to path and click OK. So the path is going to be the arc, this arc here, and the drag reference point is going to be the center of my chair. And as I move my mouse out, those chairs will be dragging and rotating to that path. The previous workflow, for the ones who have done it yesterday maybe, you would have had to select the chair, go onto your rotate, set in your distance, then try and find the center of that arc, and then do your rotate. This could actually start to save you a little bit of time. Could be handy. The next one, the multiply random. I'll get you to select the chair again. Open the multiply tool, set the drag, set it to a spread, set the spacing to 1000. We're going to untick pick a path this time, and I'm going to click randomize in the rotation of copies, randomize, and click OK. I'm going to enter the drag reference point. That is going to be offset from my chair, so I'm going to choose A and go across to B. You'll notice once you've placed it, this is all random. My screen will look different to yours, and if you have anyone else in the office, if you're looking around now, they'll be all random. If you were to do that, so the next view, multiply, randomize again, if you had used the drag reference point, the center of that chair, so open the setting, the multiply up again, spread, 1000, randomize, and started from the center of the chair, it will just rotate them randomly. If you go to the view multi 3D rotate to path, what I have here is a orange little guy sitting on a, well, standing on a white path. I'm going to select the orange guy, open the multiply tool, so open the multiply. This time the drag is my action. My graphical input will be increment and spread. I'm going to untick vertical displacement, and I'm going to choose pick a path and rotation of copies, rotate to path. Click OK. My path is going to be the edge of my white footpath here, so I'm going to click, and then the drag reference point is going to be the center node of my man, so I'm going to click. Because I have increment and spread, I can either type in a distance, so start typing a distance in, or I can just click to set that distance. So it might be here, click. And as I move my mouse out, he should be rotating along that path. Click to finish. And if you go to the next view, end result, it's the same 3D, just at a different angle, and we can see that our guy is rotating to that footpath. This could be handy for park benches, perhaps, or placing a car along a road. Auto text is the next one we're going to do. So with the auto text, now when you go and insert auto text, there is a search field at the top where you could search, for your wind zones, for your earthquake zones, even some of the system auto text, things like who saved the file last, the file name, even the file location. Some of those things could be handy in your title blocks if you needed those. Other forms of auto text that people aren't really aware of is their layout IDs and layout names also. Okay, auto text just isn't the the file info, the project info, that text. Okay, these other systems and layouts is also auto text as well. With that, we have a auto text in our labels. So I have a label here, a pretty big label. This is just a standard label which is associated to my wall, just like our labels in the past that we've had, our properties and our skin lists. If I was to get you to select the label, and we're going to modify this, and we're going to add the building material. So get your label tool selected, so you're going to type inside it. This is just being formatted in a way with tabs to make it look like a table, but where it says building material, select it or click on that point. come up to the auto text, which is this A with a little arrow and a circle around it. And at the top, start searching for building material. I don't have to type too much because I can just type build and I get the lists of those things. Here's one that I want, the general building material all. I can double click on it or click add to add it in. I'm going to come down to my list. I've got number of windows, so I'm going to click on number of windows, insert number of my auto text. This time I'm going to search window, and one of the options in my fields is wall number of windows, which I can add. Anything that is gray, this is my auto text. So here is my ID, my wall structure, the classification. It's giving me door areas, window areas, the surface area of this wall because the notes associated to it. It's also telling me that I have the 2 windows and the building materials of this wall. If I get you to click outside that text box and start to make some changes to our wall, instead of the structure being the external stud 90, let's change it to be concrete block 25 series. We'll notice that the structure changes, the building materials change. If I was to select one of these windows, stretch them out, the areas start to change. This could be good for H1, for the ones who are doing H1. This information could be handy for you. Even if you deleted that window, all of those values start to change as well. These labels, there's also for the ones who have wanted a slab showing you the area, you could associate a text label with the area of the slab straight onto your slab. That's been something people have wanted for years because it was very difficult to get an area of a slab on the drawing. You would have to put a slab down and put a fill down to get you that area. Now you could just put a label with auto text of the area. There's a section here, label tool, next couple of views down, a section like this, and we're getting different labels with different results. I've got one label here which is telling me that this wall is fire rated. I've got one telling me this is a ceiling and what that ceiling is, the finish of it, a wall also, the surface area, the ID, window IDs. There's even a label telling me what's the external finish and internal finish of my wall. And people who have done this course recently, just by playing around, have come to us and said, hey, look, we can even put the room names into these things. Because I have a zone set in my room, and all these elements are associated to that zone, when I label an object or a window or a wall, I could search for the zone. Some people are now putting a little lamp in their ceiling and then labeling that with their zone names so they can get their room names in their zone, in their sections. You can't get your zone to show in the sections and the elevations. Hopefully one day Graphisoft will get that sorted and get that to be able to do it. But in the meantime, this is the little workaround if you wanted the zone names in your sections. A couple of changes to the elevation and sections. One of the things you'll notice when you open a section or an elevation now, there'll be a grey fill. This just represents the stuff that's inside, so white, that is what's showing as being cut in your sections and elevations. That grey fill, the big border, that will not print. Okay, so the drawing won't come out grey. Anything you type inside or draw in that grey fill, that will print. Just the fill won't print. If you didn't want that on, you can right click and turn the selection range off. I'm going to show you why you want it on. If you come down to the view section boundary, you should all have a section like this. On the sides, these are my horizontal boundaries. This is why we want that grey fill. This horizontal boundary, if I was to click on that, I can drag it out to A, and that will extend the cut. This is the location of your marker on plan, and we have just moved it in my section, which is now being updated on my floor plans. Previously, you would have had to have gone into your floor plans and moved the section markers and then come back into your section and then do it from there. I can hear a few of you clapping away and cheering away down through the internet, so a few of you must be pretty excited about that. The other one as well is you can also have your vertical boundary. If there's a vertical boundary set and it's too difficult, and the same goes for the horizontal, you can come across to these little tabs just on the end of your page. You can click those and you can move those down as well. So this is my vertical range, which I'm just moving down to D. There's also a section break. There's also one there for section break. If you're not sure, if you hover your mouse there long enough, you'll get that tooltip telling you it's a section break, which you can then also move that out. It gives you the break, changes the location of that break here in my section or in the elevations. If you go to the view marked distance breaks, in here, if your section has a depth break, these will also show up, but they'll show up as a lighter grey. And you can also pick those up here in section and move those off to a new location. If you wanted to remove those breaks while you're in section, you can grab the breaks and you can move them off to the left or to the right boundaries. So I can even grab the section break, the section break here, and move that off to the left or to the right, just to get rid of it. And now I should have a section which is just a straight cut. The next one, section break lines. If I get you to select the section, the little section marker we have here, the eagle-eyed viewers of you would have noticed that there's no middle node. So that middle node has gone. And now to create a section break, you would just click on the line. So click on the line where you want that break. And in your palette, you would choose the insert break and offset, which allows you to put that break in. You can also put your breaks in your depth break, in your depth. And you can also put one in your horizontal range as well. There's a new option when you click on those to do offset all. So insert break on all lines, which then puts the break across all three, the section, the range, and also the horizontal depth. To remove a break, you would just choose the break you want to remove, so this one in this case, and you move it back in line with the one next to it. And you could do the same again, so then you could have a straight section. You can also do that to your ranges and your depths. The selective parameter transfer. Next little tool we're going to show you before we have a bit of a 5-minute break, give you a chance to quickly catch up on a few emails. I have a window here, window 01. and I want to inject that into window 02. In the past, you would have picked those up, injected it, and you would have had to go through and then change the ID, or change the layer, or change whatever the thing you didn't want to bring in. Now, if you go and pick up that settings of the window, so pick up the eyedropper, pick up the window, and as I go to inject, I have this blue palette that pops up. Mine says exclude ID. Yours might say something different, but if you click on that, you have these sets. I'm going to talk about these sets in a second. The one you want to choose is the exclude ID and layer. Once you've found that, click, and that will transfer all of those settings, excluding the ID and the layer. At this point, you could continue on injecting, and it would exclude those IDs and the layers. If you wanted to transfer all of the settings, so I want to transfer all of the settings of this wall into the one below, so it should change the layers and the ID, even the structure of it. I'm going to pick up the settings of that wall, and as I go to inject, click on that exclude the ID layer, the blue palette, and I can choose transfer all settings, and that will transfer all those settings. The only one it won't transfer is the renovation status. A lot of people don't want those things to be transferred in their pickup and transfers, so they've just excluded that out of the box. We've asked for feedback and some clarification from Graphisoft, and if they're going to re-add it back in. So if you're one of those people who do wish to have that, we've already asked for Graphisoft to maybe reintroduce it back in. The next view, element transfer setting. What I'll get you to do is go up to Edit, Element Settings, and then the Transfer Settings. So that was Edit, Element Settings, and an Element Transfer Setting. In here, these are my sets. So these are the sets that we've seen before. So we've got exclude IDs, we've got the transfer all settings, and we've also got default. Anything that has a star beside it, that's being used as for our favorites. I want you to make sure that default is set, so double click default, and that will make it used for when we're transferring our favorites, using our favorites. Anything that is ticked, so if I get you to click transfer all settings, anything that is ticked will be included in that transfer. So if I was to expand out column, everything is ticked. If I was to select over in my sets on the left, the exclude ID and layer, the ID and layer is unticked. You can create and delete and import and export these sets as well. If you were creating a new one and you didn't want to go through each tool and unticking a certain setting, over in the cog, you've got an option to group by tool or by the setting. So we should see in my layer that no tool is ticked for my transfer the layers. I'm just clicking OK, not doing any other changes other than making sure that default is set to the favorites. We've just got a few favorites later on for stairs that we just want to use, and I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So click OK. Right, we'll have a bit of a 5-minute break, give a few of you to check emails, probably call back some of your clients, and we'll resume in 5 minutes. Some of you probably want to go and get a coffee. We'll get going again at just after 1:15. Right, welcome back. We'll get going again. Um, we're going to start off with the stair tool. So, the stair tool. So, in my navigator, um, just open it up, the view stairs. In 21, brand new stair tool. Currently, is a lovely little screenshot of the signature building for Archicad 21, the Charles Perkins Centre in Sydney, done by FJMT, another one of Central Innovation customers. Last year it was the Len Lai Centre, so New Zealand building on the cover of 20. This year, 21 is an Australian company, so it shows the quality of work that's going on in this side of the world, to have, you know, back-to-back buildings, one for Archicad 20, one for 21, and hopefully we can get 22 as well. Anyone who does want to go and see this building, we believe it is a university which has an open atrium down the bottom, so you can walk around it. It's about a 20-minute walk from the CBD in Sydney. So if you want to go and have a look at another signature building in this part of the world, go and check it out. So with the new stair tool, couple of things. Just remember the Archicad stair has to be used with the Archicad railing tool. The CAD image poly stair has to be used with the CAD image railing tool. You can't use the Archicad stair with the CAD image railing and the poly stair with the Archicad railing. They've got to work with each other. We've moved that poly stair and the Archicad railing down to the bottom of the design tools, so they're away from those Archicad stairs. By the end of this, you'd probably want to use that Archicad stair anyway. It is a pretty cool tool, sort of based off the CAD image poly stair, which is awesome. We're not angry or annoyed or anything. We're actually quite pleased that Graphisoft have looked at our tool and gone, hey, these guys have done something pretty good. Let's build on it. And they've done a very, very good job. With the stairs, new stair comes new settings and new tools. We're going to show you some of these very, very basic things. There's a lot of the things that are in other tools that we're not going to show you because you already know how to do those, changing layers, changing pen weights, all of those things. We're just going to show you some of the little basic settings that could be handy for you. One of them is the input method. So upwards, downwards. So where does your stair start? Draw that. If you don't know where your stair starts, but you know where it finishes, you draw downwards. There's the option to add a railing to the stairs when you draw it. You can either have left, right, both, or set it to none. A lot of people prefer none and then place the railing on later. We're going to set all of our stairs to none and put our railings on later. There's also a baseline. The baseline, think of that as your reference line for your walls, so the outside, so the left or the right or the center, and it's always treated as if you were walking up the stairs. So if you wanted that baseline on the left side as you're walking up the stair. The last thing down the bottom in my screenshots is the rules. These rules you could set. So these are the rules as in what's your riser height, what's your going, what's your stair pitch angle. These can be set to the New Zealand building codes, off to standards in Australia or America, if you do or have projects in those regions. These could all then be saved as favorites. So you've got stairs for the service stairs here in New Zealand versus private residential stairs with different rules. It doesn't have all the rules in the building codes. It won't say after X amount of height it has to have a landing. Still, that stuff you'll have to sort out yourselves and put that into your design. But this takes away a lot of those difficult things of how many or how high is my riser and all of those little bits and pieces. If you go to the view basic stair, in here we've got a little 3D view which we're going to draw a stair. Now drawing a stair in 2D is very, very simple, but 2D is boring, so why don't we do it in 3D? Over in my stair tool, I just want to apply the favorite basic stair. No trickery or wizardry here. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. All this is the input method is upwards, and the baseline is set to on the left. In our 3D view, down here I've got a couple of guides, and where they intersect I want you to click and draw your stair up to the edge of the slab and click to finish. And you should have a simple straight stair, which could have been done in 2D just as easily. Let's make a few changes. So we're going to change the story height. So I want you to open the story settings. So on the Mac, Command 7, Control 7 for the PC people. And we have our story settings. Change the sea level and datum from 3000 and set that to 3300. Click OK. What will happen is our slab will go up, our walls will go up, just like they're linked, so will our stair. The stairs can be linked between those stories. If I was to make a bigger change, so open the story settings again, and instead of the 3300, set that to 4000. Click OK. At this point, you're going to get a warning. This is just a little message telling you that the last operation you did, the stairs become invalid. It couldn't keep what our design strengths were, so it couldn't keep how many rises and the height and all of those other bits and pieces. So click OK. And the stair is going to show as pink. This means it needs to be reviewed. So if you get your arrow tool selected, select the stair and open the settings of the stair. In the stair settings, we're going to change the height because you will notice this is now minus 500. We're going to set this to 0. Before I do so, just take note of what's happening over here, the number of rises and even the riser height. I'm going to set that to 0, and what's going to happen, it's going to add 3 more rises, and it's also going to reduce that riser height just slightly to fit inside my rules. Once I click OK, it'll add those 3 rises and it will change my stair and make it meet again. We're going to draw a stair downwards this time, so getting my stair tool, get it selected in your toolbox. Let's change the direction, so instead of the upwards method, let's go the downwards. So input method downwards. And I'm going to change the baseline and set that to be the right. Now I know my stair starts here. I'm going to start in this corner where the slab and the wall intersect. Click. And as I move my mouse out, I'm going to then click in the corner of where those walls are, and then a double click to finish the stair. You may have done one too many clicks and you start to draw a stair again, you can hit escape. But you should have a stair that is now placed around that corner. All done in 3D. Why have you got those paper thin stairs, and why does my stair look like that? The reason for that is there's a new settings inside the model view options. Inside that model view options, you can have the two stairs as either a full or a schematic stair. So the ones we'd been drawing was showing as schematic, so they show paper thin. In there, you've got an option to change what they look like, what color they look like. The same goes for your railings. You've got full, simplified, and schematic. There's also an option for your symbol components. So if you had a model view option for your presentation documents, these could have all of those unticked. All the things that confuse our customers in a presentation document, the descriptions, the structure, the text up and down, even the numbering, and even the line perhaps. You could turn those off in that model view option, but then for my builder on another plan, it has those things on. Go to the view stretch, the next view stretch. And in my stretch here, we're just going to reapply that basic stair again, this basic stair favorite. For the ones who haven't used Archicad 20, if you hover your mouse next to a tool, there is a little drop down, this little button just to the right of it. If you click on that, it brings out the favorite little pop out, and select basic stair, double clicking. Starting at hotspot 1, click, go to hotspot 2, 3, and then click at 4. Oh, my stair's not quite right. I'm just going to quickly change my stories here. If anyone else got that little message that I did, just change your home story. So home, basement, level 2, current. And then just repeat those processes. So 2, 3, and then click on 4. We have our stair. So if that didn't show for you, just make sure that your linked stories, the home is set to basement 2, which has current, and then redraw that stair. Once that stair's been drawn, I want you to click on the stair, and I want to make sure I get the blue line. If you've got a green lines, just click off it again and click in the middle of the stair. At this point, at the end of the stair, the point, the node, if you click on that node, you have an option in the pet palette to rearrange the steps. And you could rearrange those steps and pull that back to be in line with the wall where they meet. At this point, you could continue and change your stair to make it a bit of a different shape, but we're going to leave that. We're just going to leave it at that and just show you that in the meantime. Go to the view landing. So for the ones who have used the CAD image polystair, you'll be familiar with the palette we're seeing here in our screenshot. For the ones who haven't, we're going to show you now. So the bottom row, you can draw straight stairs or curved. And in the top row, you can either have a flight, a landing, or even landings that have a winder with equal angles, or a winder with equal goings. So grabbing my stair tool in my toolbox, just double check your link stories, make sure it says the basement 2. Clicking at 1, go to 2. At 2 in the palette, just change that to landing. Then go and click at 3. And if you wanted your landing to continue, you would continue clicking, but I want to go back into flight, so I'm going to choose flight. And then click at 4. We have a landing. Go to the view solver, the next view. Again, I've just got a little favorite we just want to apply just to force the stair solver on us. This is something you'll see a fair bit. So if you go to your stair tool, go to your favorites and choose stair solver. In your stair solver, once you've done that, once you've applied that stair solver favorite, click at 1, go to 2. Notice the lovely little feedback we're getting of our stair. We're getting a graphical feedback of what the stair is going to look like. Click at 3, and as I head down to 4, that feedback disappears and you just get an outline of the stair. Click at 4. It may have to be a double click to finish it. The reason you got that outline is telling you that you're about to get the stair solver. In this little stair solver, what's happened is Archicad's calculated the thousands of different types of stairs that could fit into it. And as you've gone to 2, that thousands of stairs may have been dropped down to half. And then same with 3, get more and more. And you get down to 4, and you might have about 50 or 100 different types of stairs that could fit into that region. It then picks the 4 best of what you were trying to do. So it's learning what you're doing while you're placing that stair. You can then choose which stair you want. So in this palette, if I move my mouse around, you'll notice the stair changes. Anything that is blue, those are the elements that are changing. Double click on the stair that you want. So I want the top right. Double click and it will place that stair in the way you wanted it. Go to the view turning types. Now this could have been set before we had drawn the stair. So back on my stretch and my landing, those stairs all looked very, very horrible. They didn't have that nice little offset that we had when we had drawn them. So those offsets could be set beforehand. But if we had a stair later on that the customer or even ourselves had said, I don't really like that big landing, I want to turn that into a couple of winders, we could do so. In the past, you had to delete those stairs. If you remember back, Archicad stair, you would have had to delete it. Even the CAD image stair, you probably would have had to have deleted it as well. So I'm just going to select the stair, clicking in the middle, and I want this blue line. The blue line, that's the baseline. I'm going to talk about that soon. And at the corner of that blue line, if you click on the node, in the palette, you have the option to turning type options. Click on that. So I have a simple landing with those offsets, as I mentioned just then, or I've got equal winder with equal goings, and even a winder with equal angles. I'm going to select equal angles, and I'm going to put the fixed number of goings as 3. And you can change the offsets if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as 100, and then click OK. It will take those last couple of treads and then add them down in my landing to make that winder. Edit mode. The view edit mode. A few of you who have used the curtain wall tool will be very familiar with the curtain wall edit mode. Well, that has also been added to the stair tool. So if you select the stair that's withdrawn in our view, and there's a blue little palette that's popped up and says edit. If you click edit, your screen will turn to grey. This is just to indicate that you're in the edit mode. And in the edit mode, we're going to change it from schematic to symbol. Click symbol. at the top. Once it's set to symbol, you can zoom in to your stair and you can click on the individual bits of it. So I could grab that number 9 and I can move it and I can rotate it. I can also click on the gap of my brake here, grab that pink node, and I can move those as well. I could even change the location of where this brake is. So if I wanted the brake to be further up, or even change the angle of the brake. Perhaps the brake is at the beginning of my stair. If I wanted a curve on this walk line, if I click on the walk line at the corner, I can insert a fillet. I can even grab the description and I can move that as well and also rotate it. To exit the edit mode, you can hit escape a few times or you can click the exit edit mode at the top. Once you've exited the edit mode, your screen should come back to color and that blue little palette at the top of your left screen would have disappeared as well. If you go to the view edit mode components, the next view, I have a stair again. We're just going to click on that stair and open the edit. If you can't find edit anywhere, remember you can go through the long way through the menus, going up to design and then enter edit mode. Once you head into the edit mode, it's going to go grey again. This time, because we have schematic selected, we can go through and change all the individual bits. Now there's a lot going on here. I can't quite see where the stair is. There's a lot of dashed lines, there's some columns, there's some beams, handrails, some cabinets. If we come across to our palette, we have environment, and we can turn the environment off, which then just gives me the stair, the thing that I'm just trying to focus on. And if I zoom in, I can now click on the bottom tread and I can start to modify that tread. So if I wanted the front edge to be a little bit spiky, maybe the second tread has a bit of a curved edge on it, so you could create a bullnosed stair in this way. You could even change the shape of that stair. You can continue this edit in 3D. So if you were to skip across to 3D, I've got a view already set up so you don't have to try and find it. If you go to the edit mode component in 3D, it shows you that stair in 3D, which you can continue doing your edits in. Maybe it's a good time to turn the environment back on. So at the top, I've got my environment, and I can turn that back on to see what's happening. Hit escape a couple of times, wait for everything to come back to full color and the palette to disappear. And I have those stairs, and they've stayed in that change. So that was very difficult, and probably couldn't even do it in those old stair tools, the CAD image and the poly stair. So that's very, very nice to be able to make those more customized stairs with the Archicad 21 stair. If you go to the view boundary line edit, we're going to talk about the boundary line and the baseline. So the first one we've seen, if you were to click on the stair, you're going to get a blue line. That's the baseline. I want the boundary line, and if you click in this corner here, the bottom right corner, you'll get some green lines. These are the boundary lines. And these boundary lines, we can change the shape of the boundary. So this edge here, perhaps it's a curved. So I'm going to click the arc and add a curve. Still a straight stair, but I've got a curved boundary. I can also add in a few nodes. And also put a curve between those nodes. You'll notice that the numbers are also following that curve. If we were to go to the baseline, edit the next view, we can change the shape of the stair with the baseline. So instead of it being a straight stair, by clicking on the stair and getting the blue line, instead of it straight, I can choose curved and add a curve to it. Just like I did down my stretch, I could insert a nerve and ended up with a bit of a snaked stair if I wished to do so. But today I'm just adding a curve to this one. If we go to the baseline and boundary line, the next view, we're going to put the two of them together. So what happens when we change the baseline into a curve? So select the stair and set it to be a curve. If we go and click in the corner so we can get the green boundary lines, grab that boundary line and I'm going to move it off to the edge of that wall and move this one to this wall and just modify that angle, that arc, and I can have a stair looking like this. If I was to open those up in 3D, the next view, here's my first stair, the straight stair with the curved boundary. The second stair, which we changed from a straight stair into a curved stair with that baseline. And then the third stair, which we did the combination of the two. The view lobby stair, the magic wand. We can also place the stair using a magic wand. So if you go over to your stair tool, apply the favorite lobby stair. Just make sure that your link story's home, ground floor, so link story 3, ground floor is set to current. We're just going to check to make sure that our direction is downwards and the baseline is the center. That's all that we're doing with that favorite. There's no other little tricks here. Holding spacebar down where this line, this curved line, meets the edge of the slab and the circle, I'm holding my spacebar down and I'm clicking to get my curved stair. If we go and look at that stair in 3D, the 3D lobby view, I have this curved stair. Now at this point, if I wanted to change the stair, because it looks a little bit boring for this design, I could go through into the edit mode and start to modify each individual little bits of tread. But maybe I've got a custom tread. So I've got this little morph that I've created, but this could have been made out of walls, it could have been slabs, it could have been roofs, could have been other 3D elements. I've then gone through and I've selected them all. So this is my morph here. I've gone and selected that and then gone through the menu structure. So File, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection As, and choose Stair Tread. Kind of like you would if you were making a custom door leaf or a handle or a knob for your cabinet tools. It then asks you to give it a name. So you give it a name and where you want it to be saved. It will get saved into your embedded library. If you needed this on all of your projects, you would export that out of your embedded library, that little object. But we just want it in this one project. It then asks you a few questions. So in the status bar, it will be asking you where is the center point of this stair tread. Well, this was this click, the first little node here. This is the center of my stair, as you can see in my little screenshot. It will then ask you where X is. So where's the front edge of it? So X is off this way. So I clicked here to place it. That was my second click. So first click in the middle, second to define, which was X. At that point, it will ask you if you want to modify any of those surfaces, and then you click OK. At that point, when we head back to our 3D lobby view, coming back to my stair, if I was to select the stair we've just placed, the stair here, open up the settings, Control T or Command T if you're on a Mac. On the left palette, if you come down, or column, if you come down to finishes, and below finishes there's tread. Where it says the inbuilt tread, select that option and you have a few different treads. So currently we were using the inbuilt tread, but there's also profile treads. Could be useful if you wanted to do a profile tread. Or you've got the objects that we made. Now there's two of them here, pretty much the same. The original one, the one that I made, was the upgrade training lobby, and then we've just adapted it just slightly just to make it a little bit more interesting. You can choose either one of those two. I'm going to choose the original one. So double click on it, then go OK. And now we have a stair that's slightly a little bit more out there. Very difficult to do that in the old tools. So, a bit of an extra few ticks here for the new Archicad stair. Now, the stringers are still on, and it's kind of ruining my look a little bit. So I'm just going to select the stair once again, go into the settings of the stair, and under the structure, so at the top we have structure, you have a few options. If you want the structure on, do you want it to be a stringer or cantilever? Do you want stringers left or right? Do you want just a beam? And maybe I want a beam for my landing as well. Depending on which structure you choose, you'll have different options in your settings. So one of these for my beams is the number of beams. Is it 1 beam, 10 beams, the offset of those, what those beams look like. Does it have a plate, a tread plate? How is that tread plate being connected to your beam, a secondary support, and the size of that plate, where it sits, building material. We're going to come back and show you those other settings soon. So once you've done that, you would go OK. And now I have a central beam down my stair. We've got a little bit of issue here, but that's where you would change that plate and that secondary support. So you would change those things to make it not look like so. Go to the view, stair accessories. The next view, stair accessories. So in here, at one point, someone's probably asked you, or you've probably never even thought about doing it, but you probably would have had to have modeled the little treads, the little non-slip, little tread, little slip things. A lot of people just ignore those because it's not important, and you probably would have put a note on them. But now with the stair tool, you have the ability to show those. So if you select the stair that we have, go into the stair tool, settings, and go to your finishes and go to tread. In your tread component setting, in here, because we're using tread 21, these will all be different depending on which tread you use. But in the tread 21, we have the ability to turn the nosings on and off. Does it have a mitered or a milled recess? Does it have the non-slipped bands, which I'm going to turn on? How many of those bands? What's their thickness? What their sizes are, their offsets? And go OK. It will add it to our plan and also add it to our model, to our 3D model. So I can see these here in my 3D, and I'd also see them back in my plan also. If you go to the view support ends, you'll notice this is the same stair, but those bands also follow my zigzag, sort of spiky, key-shaped nosing. Now on the stair that I have here, a few of you, I'm just going to change my angle just slightly, a number of you, and I'm saying almost 90% of you, would have just ignored this little bit poking out through our slab. There's probably one or two of you that would have lost sleep over that and probably done a solid element operation or something to get rid of that and have it looking nice. What we can do with the stair tool is if I open the settings of this stair and come back up to structure. The structure of the stair is using a stringer, and the stringer settings has different options. So does the steel beams. So the stringer size, and even the profile of it. One of the options that the structure has is the support ends and connections. So if you expand out the support end and connections, instead of this being a vertical cut, I could set it to be a horizontal cut, a horizontal connection, or even a vertical connection. I'm just going to set it to horizontal cut. And then you've got the option to change your offsets, but I'm going to leave that and I'm going to go OK. And now you have your stringer that has a cut at the very end, giving it the perfect opportunity for someone to trip up my stair. If you go to the last one, the support ends. Same again, this is another steel structured little stair showing those secondary supports. One of the ones we can turn on with our stair structure. So if you select the stair we see here, open the settings. Because we have the beam and my beam flights, the same spot where we could change the tread plates and the secondary supports. There's also options to turn on the top plates and the bottom plates. So if I turn the bottom plate on, instead of it just being a simple square plate, I could actually have the flanges. So I could set those flanges to be a certain size, a certain distance apart. I can even have them follow the beam or be perpendicular. Then go OK. Now the only thing that's missing is probably a couple of 3D bolts that you could go and find in your objects, or if you haven't got any, find some online and then add those to it if you wish to show the bolts and the bolt fixings. So that's just a brief little overview of that stair tool. There's a lot of other little settings in there. A lot of them you would have seen in other objects like the walls and columns. this is showing you can draw the stair very, very simply, and you can even make a complex stair. A lot of people who have had this installed already have gone back through, had a bit of a play around, and have come up with some awesome stairs. We've got a couple of examples in here for you that you can have a look at. So one of those examples is Barbora's stair. So Barbora, one of the support people, she had sent a little example of a stair with a little image, and she's gone and created that stair in 3D. This is a stair she'd found an image of online. So in here I've got a 3D little view. This is that stair we first looked at, and we all thought that was a bit complex, but all this is just a simple stair, and all it would be is just changing the custom, setting it so each one of these treads is a different size and a different thickness. Very, very simple once you've realized how it was done. Soto, before he left, he saw a little picture and sort of asked, why can't we have these in New Zealand? So kind of had to explain, the building code to him. It's probably why he's gone to Spain. But, we could actually have some of these nice looking stairs in our models if we wish to do so. Michael, another one of the support team over in Australia, he saw this image and went, right, we can create that as well. So he's gone and created that stair, and also looks nice in 3D. He's kind of adapted it slightly. Every second tread is a custom object. So if I was to select the stair and show you, so this tread here is using the other object, tread 02. Could have been one of our complex little upgrade lobby ones if we wanted to. You can also have a different surface for each stair or each tread, and you can also have different structures depending on what's going on. You can also edit the structure of these stairs. So if you wanted it to be a different structure, you go into your edit modes. You've got your structural settings. And maybe that could be a structure like so. Right, railings. Right, in my railing, we can make some very, very simple rails. We could even make complex rails as well. So in here, we've got a complex one with some patterns, and we've even got a simple one. If we go to the view place railing, in here, I've got a rail. Looks like it's already been placed. If it's already been placed, just select it and delete it. Grab your rail, the rail tool, and we're just going to apply the favorite basic railing. Starting at 1, click, and just like you would if you were using a polyline or using the wall in the chained method, you've got to double click to finish. So double click at 2, and you have a rail. If you open up the view, the 3D rail, the flip, first thing you'll notice it's orange. Just remember your rails can also be set in the schematic. So at the bottom we've created a little model view option just in our file here. It's called schematic. If I was to change that down the bottom. Instead of schematic, set that to 3D exterior. Everything should come back to its full detail. You'll notice that the handrail is on the wrong side of the balustrade. So if I was to click this balustrade, right click on it and go flip railing on the reference line. And now it will flip it so it's on the right side. If I get you to select this railing, we can change the segments. So select that rail we've just placed down and go into the settings. Click on segment, and in here this is my segment. This is my pattern, the pattern editor. Anything that is white, that's my pattern, and then the grey just reproduces or repeats that pattern. You can set out the pattern of where it starts, where it finishes, the fixed number of patterns, and even the reference line, if it has an angle, the height of your rail as well. If you click through, come to the inner posts. Click down to the inner post. Now, the pattern is all driven by the inner post. If I change that pattern, the distance, instead of 1,000, and if I set that to 1,800 or something different, you'll notice that it updates. And when I click OK, it changes that here in my model. So that pattern editor, just remember your railing posts, that controls your pattern. You can create some very complex little patterns. You can put in more panels, set their little offsets, and have a pattern like here in my screenshot. Go to the view, glass balustrade. Glass balustrade, this view here. Once you're at this view, we're going to make a glass balustrade like here in my screen, in the little screenshot. So double click on the railing tool. We're going to remove all the bits we don't want. So one of those things is the top rail. So I'm going to click top rail. I'm going to come across and click the minus to remove. I can also click here in the white area, click on the thing I want to remove. So maybe it's this rail. So I can click that rail and I can remove. I can also click the balustrades and remove those. And I'm also going to remove this bottom rail. I'm going to leave the inner post. We're going to make a mistake on purpose so you can see. Let's go to the panels. Go to panels and then click the plus. The plus we're going to add, and we're going to add that here into my panel. We're going to change the segment. So instead of segment top, instead of that being 50, I'm going to set that to 0. So the top of my glass panel will be at the top of my rail, so 0. I'm then going to set the bottom to go past my wall, so minus 500. I'm going to change the offset from my inner posts from 50 and maybe set those to both be 5. It leaves me with a 10mm gap. You've also got the option to offset from the reference line. So we're going to set that to be -20. So my panel will be offset by 20 mils. Down the bottom, in the panel component settings, I want to make sure show fixing is ticked. and then click the little button here, this one here, the fixings. And instead of brackets, set that to be point fixings. Set those point fixings so we have them at 20 on the left, 20 on the right. The radius is 50 mil. And then the top is set to 400. The offset of the top point of those fixings is set to 400. Once you've made those changes, click OK. And then go to the Place Glass Balustrade view. At this point, go and click at 1, go to 2. If you've got a circle, you may just have to change that to be the line. So go to 2, and then go to 3. Double click at 3. Now go to the View 3D Glass Balustrade. This will open up your 3D view, and we should have this balustrade. Now, we see these posts. These are the mistake we made on purpose. We can't turn those posts off because that destroys our pattern. We'll just end up with one big sheet of glass. So select the railing and go into the settings. At the inner posts, so get the inner post selected. Instead of using railing post 21, we're going to use invisible. We can't turn the end posts off either, so under nodes and posts, we're going to change the railing post and set that to be invisible also. Then click OK. And that removes those posts, so now I just have a glass balustrade with some joins at them. Go to the next view, associative versus static. Once you're here, I just want you to reapply the favorite basic railing, just so you can see, it's just a little bit thicker than the other ones, just so you can see what's going on. We're going to change a couple of settings. We're going to make sure that the railing and nodes is set to static and the segment is set to static. Just double check as well that your home for the link story is basement to current, where we're drawing this at the moment. Click at A and draw a rail over to B. Remember, you have to double click to finish. You just placed a rail, just like we did before. This time, let's change it from, instead of static, set it to be associative. Go and click at C, and then go at D. Maybe a double click to finish. Change it, this segment, change it to associative. Go from E across to F, and this time you'll notice that it's now placing it along that edge. Double click to finish. So it's placed it along there. Go and repeat the same again, so go to G, and we'll go around to A. A lot of people would have gone click, 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 click all the way around, but I'm just going to go from G straight across to A, double click, and it's going to place that rail all the way across to A. Now, if we make some changes, so grab your arrow tool, select the slab, and at point B, grab the node and move it and see what happens. Nothing happens to our rail. If I was to go and move D, this rail changes. It's associated to those nodes. This one was set to static. E, if you go and move E, it will update that rail, it will move it, and it will also change what's happening along that segment because it's set to associative. If you go and insert a node at H, so at H, go and insert a node, it will add a new railing in along that node, along that segment. At I, add a fillet. It will update the rail and add a fillet to it. Go to the next view, associative slab. Grab your railing tool in your toolbox. And starting at this corner here, I'm going to click. Because I have associative for my railing and nodes, and associative for my static segment, when I come across to this corner here where the stair and the slab and the wall is, you'll notice you'll get a bit of a ghost rail. It's currently sitting in front of those steps, which is a little bit annoying because I'm not going to be able to walk up those stairs. If I hit tab, it will then go the other direction, the longer distance. And I can double click to finish. Now it's placed that railing the longer way. Go to the view associative stair railing, and when you get to this view, don't change the angle. Leave it at this angle. What we have here is we have two stairs. 1, 2. We're going to place a railing starting here, and it's going to go up our stairs with a couple of clicks. So grab your railing, make sure it's set to associative and associative. Starting at the bottom of the stair, if you move your mouse in there, the edges should go blue. Click. Go to the top of that first stair where it meets the slab. Click. You'll notice that it's now being associative to the stair. I'm getting it going around the segment. I can go to the next stair at the bottom. Click. Go away up to the top to the next stair and double click to finish. So now I have this one railing that's going up these multiple stairs. If you wanted to, you could have drawn those stairs with those railings on, but then you would have to fill in the little bits in between each one. So this is why a lot of people draw their railings after, because they can continue doing it all as one railing. If you go to the slab modification railing, this little view here, this is all one rail. How it was done was the first click, second click, everything being associative, it snapped itself around the edges. Then the third click was at the top of the stairs. The fourth click was on the other side of the stair, and we hit tab, so it went the long way around. Fifth click was at the bottom of the stair, and then a double click to finish, 6 and 7, and that is all one stair. or one rail, sorry. If I was to change the pattern, it changes on all of them. A driveway ramp. We've lost the ability to quickly create ramps in Archicad 21 because we've lost that stair tool. But an alternative is to use the railing tool. So open up the railing tool. With the railing selected, go up to your segment and let's remove out the things we don't want. So that's the top rail. So I'm going to select top rail and remove. Handrail, I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to leave the rail. I'm going to use that for my ramp, but I'm going to get rid of the inner post this time because I don't need a pattern. So I'm going to remove the inner post. I'm also going to remove the balustrade. So now I'm just got the rail. Depending on what kind of ramp you wanted, if you wanted just a rectangle ramp, you could then use rail 21 and just change the shape and then set your heights and your thicknesses and your width and how high is it from the bottom of it. What you could also do is you could make a complex profile. So if you had a road, for instance, you could make a profile of that road and apply that as a handrail. So rail 21, if you select rail 21 here, set that to be profile ramp 21. Down in the ramp component settings, instead of the rail wood on steel, I could choose some of the other complex profiles I've made. One of the ones we've made for this file is called driveway ramp. Select driveway ramp. I don't need any fixings, so I'm going to turn that off. Now, when you draw a profile, the height is referencing back to that origin of when you drew that profile. So 70 means the origin of my profile is going to be 70 mils above this line, above that dashed line. If I set that to 0, go OK. Go to the View Car Park Ramp. Now we're going to associate this rail from this slab up to this slab. Rails can be associated to slabs, they could be associated to roofs, a mesh, walls, and even the stairs. But today we're going to associate it between this slab to this slab. I probably would have done it with a mesh. Hence the reason you have that favorite for your fence. You could use that fence line and put that down the side of your mesh. So starting at this point here, we have a node here to associate it to in the middle of my doorway. I'm going to click and then have it associated to the slab above. Click, double click to finish. I have a ramp. If you go and look at that in 3D, here's my ramp. Now we made a mistake on purpose. Remember, we left the posts on. So if you didn't want this little center bollard, you would have to go back into the settings of the rail, choose your posts, and remember to set that to invisible. Some people might have this below or above the mesh. You could probably do a solid element operation against that as well. There's nothing to stop you from doing all of those other little bits and pieces if you needed to do so. Got a little video. Just want to quickly show you. Archicad's doing a little series at the moment where they're doing a rebuild of a whole lot of things in Archicad. I've got one here of the Great Wall of China. So if anyone wants the Great Wall of China around their site, there's a lovely little how-to video there. And if you really wanted to have your kids believe you that Archicad's been around for years, you could show them that video and show the Great Wall of China was designed in Archicad. I'm assuming it's not, but good chance it is. I don't know. Right, got some changes to the visualization little tools. One of the ones we've got here in the Cine Render. The Cine Render now has the R18 engine from Cinema 4D. That's not that dodgy R18 version, okay? It's just the next revision of the add-on from Cinema 4D, which is R18. There's a couple of other little changes, one of them being you can now save your date and the time in your 3D views, and there's no little sun option. It's all done in your perspective settings, which could help a lot of people. In some surfaces, there's a variation shader. Here's a little screenshot. It might be a little bit confusing. Everyone might be thinking that's just a simple wall. That's a whole lot of objects stacked on top of each other using the multiply tool and set to have a variation surface. So each one of these variations, same surface, but just gives you a different color. If you're following along, there are a couple of little views in here. This one here, which says brackets render after it, it will render that automatically for you to show you an example of one. Also, bump mapping, there's an option in there in the shaders for a parallax, and that just gives you that little bit more better look in that little bit of bumps if you needed it. One on the left doesn't have that on, the one on the right has it on and set to a value to make it look more realistic, more bumpy. For those doing monochrome models, the white cards, if you go into the detailed settings now and go to effects and then monochrome model, you have the option to override the white and change it to be any color you wish. And then from there as well, you've got options to turn on the transparency, the reflectancies, the alpha, any of the other little settings in there. And these all render out as you would expect them. Here's another render. This is a white card model which has it set to green. It's also got transparency on as well. If you go to the next view, Cine Render, the lens distortion. We've got the ability now in the detailed settings. So if you go into the physical renderer, go to the detailed settings and the physical renderer, under there's lens distortion. This would be the same place as well for the ones who haven't been in here, where you can change your camera to have the physical settings of a proper camera, the f-stops, the ISOs, shutter speeds. And these look nice when you render them also. Three D styles. So in the past, if you had a view and you went up to the old menus, the view, 3D view options, you could change it to be wireframe. And at that point, every view was set to wireframe. There's now an option for 3D styles, which allows you to save these views as a wireframe or as a white model with shadows, without shadows, and so on and so on. If you go to the view, 3D styles, the large model, we have a big model here of our building, and you can come down to your quick options along the bottom and change that from white model and set it to something different. So you could have it as a wireframe. Perhaps it's a white model with shadows, transparency off. Could also be a detailed shading with shadows and without shadows. To change all of these settings, quickest way to get there is to click this little button, the 3D styles little button next to my option. In here, my 3D styles, if I was to modify one, I would probably rename it so people didn't get confused, or create a new one. Create a new style. Different options in here gives you the engine. So is it vectorial or OpenGL? Is it transparent? Is it wireframe? Monochrome, so is it all one surface with one contour? What does the background look like as well? These could all be different in between each one. Does it have contours? Does it have shadows? So you could create a number of those and have them saved with your views. Other little improvements. One of those improvements is teamwork. There's an option now to do a send reminder. So if you've got someone in your office who's using Teamwork and doesn't do a send, I would suggest going to their computer and setting the reminder to every step and maybe every minute. That way they can do their send. They get a little pop-up in the bottom of their corner just to say, hey, do a send. If by default it is set to 50 steps and every 60 minutes. So it's probably a good default, but if you've got someone in the office that just doesn't do a send, you've got to do those things. You don't need a reminder for saves because you're always going your Control S or your Command S doing that save. Just remember the auto save is for recovery only after a disaster. If your computer crashes, that is what the auto save is for. It's not for you not to go file save. Library objects. There's a few library objects now that have building materials. So if you were to pick a steel structure and then go down into the settings and go and find the building surface, building materials and the surfaces, you could add a building material. So this could be your steel, it could be plywood, could be water, could be air, whatever your building material is. Not all objects have it. A little bit pointless for a toilet, maybe to have a concrete building material. But yeah, there's building materials. The CAD image tools will slowly be upgraded to have these features. It's being rolled out. It won't be all of them have them. It will be upgraded slowly as it goes through. CAD image tools, speaking of, for the ones who are using the support email, the CAD image email, so support@cadimagegroup.com. The new email is nz.support@centralinnovation.com. You can still log your tickets on mycadimage.com, where you can still get those great things like the tip of the months, the other bits and pieces of objects, some installation guides and other guides on there. There's also this file. All of this stuff will be up there as well. Just remember, in our support, just like Archicad, so Graphisoft support the latest 2 versions, 21 and 20, and start 2017 and 16. We're starting to take that same approach. It doesn't mean that we won't help you with those older ones like 19 and 18. It just means that some of those development, it might be a little bit too difficult to bring those up into the latest and greatest. The stair tool, for instance, most of the development on that will just be bug fixes or major bug fixes. It won't be new options. It won't be made to make it better than the Archicad stair. If you have any old Archicad 9 issues and things like that, maybe come to the latest and greatest, because it gets very difficult to support those older software as technology moves ahead. Again, if you're going to use those CAD image tools and you want to get them into your toolbox, the easiest way is to apply that profile, that options work environment, apply profile, CAD image profile. Adds all of those tools into the toolbox for you. Because of user feedback, we got an email saying I want shingles. We assumed that was for the wall covering tool, so we've added that into the wall covering tool. There's a shingles option there now as well. There hasn't been any other major updates to the tools. If you're familiar with Archicad 20, you'll be familiar with the tools and how they work. If this is the first time you're seeing 21 or even 20 and why it all looks like this and why the tool looks like this, we would recommend you go and watch the Archicad 20 upgrade training, and it will explain why. The Essential Library, this was the Select Library. It had renamed, it's been renamed to the Essential Library. It's the merger of the New Zealand Select Library and the Australian's Essential Library. Andrew Watson's gone through, looked at all the objects, and has picked out all the best, the ones that work between the 2 countries. He's also made a lovely PDF guide which tells you what's new, what's been renamed, and what was existing and what's currently in there. It's a pretty big file. Last time I checked, it's about 1 gig. So don't do it while you're on your mobile phone data. Do it when you're on in the office, perhaps, and bring that down. In there's a couple of new objects for everybody. One of them is a drainage object. This came from upgrade training last year. Someone saying they wanted some plumbing pipes and objects like that. So there's a few objects in there if you needed those. There's also a cable tray. For the ones who wanted a cable tray, here we go, there's a little object for cable trays. That PDF guide, most of you should have that now. What it is, if I quickly find that for you, it's just a little guide going through telling you what's new, what's old. So there's a lot in there. That guide itself is about 143 pages. There's also installation of how you should install this. Overview, download, install, migrating, and if you need any help or feedback. Couple of changes to BIMX, couple of improvements. So what's new? If you're using the transfer website, you'll get a push notification when you get your updates to the models. There's also an enhancement in the download protocols, the web services, accelerators in Hong Kong in Western Australia. Should help to bring those models down a little bit faster for you. A couple of publishing improvements in the settings. When you go to your publishing sets, you'll get options to upload to the folders if it's public or private, password protected, and you'll see your quota as well. Credits. So if you wanted to add your logo into your model in your Archicad file, probably a good idea to do this to your template is to add the file info, project info, or project preview, sorry, and go to the settings in there and then put in your company logo. You can also put in your web address as well. For the ones who haven't got BIMX on their tablets or on their phones or downloading it for the first time, you get a getting started little page which you can click on, and it will give you the getting started guide to BIMX. Remember, BIMX is free. There is a paid version which is about $75 from memory, from the Apple store, the App Store, or from Google's Play Store. If you've already got it, you'll get a what's new pop-up little feature when there's an update. Some things good to know. It now supports the VR. So if you have a Google Cardboard V2 with the little button on the side, not the magnet one will not work. The button one pops out, touches the screen, and you can view your models in VR. A lot of customers are buying these things. They're around about $20, putting their logo on it and then giving it out to their customer as that value-added little bit to their clients. We do sell branded ones. If you want a branded one, contact Debbie. Not sure of the exact price. She could give you the better price than I could. For the ones who do want to put it onto their phones, check the specs on those things. It's got to be the latest and greatest, the better. But if you've got customers or clients, sorry, who are on the old iPhones, make sure it's 4S and newer. Same with the iPads, iPod Touches, Android devices, because there's so many of them. Very hard to nail it down to one or two of them, but just make sure it's running at least 4.03 and higher, and it meets those minimum specs of at least a gig of RAM and a 1.2 dual processor phone. The recommendation from Graphisoft is an iPad Air or those iPad Pros, the big ones, or even the newer iPhones as well. Some of the people in the office have those S8s, and they look quite nice running those things as well. If you wanted to share your model on social media, you can now do that with your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, and your Yammer. For the ones who know what Yammer is, you could load the BIMX up there. This just gives you a 360 view of your model. It's not the entire model, it's just where you shared it. So where you were standing at the time, it's just where you shared. The other one is for those who are using the transfer website. You can, or they're not using it, you can upload your BIMX hypermodels after. So instead of uploading it through Archicad, you could save it as a local file and then log into your transfer website and then transfer it, so upload it from there later if you wish to do so. Got a little video just for those ones who aren't familiar with BIMX. Little video to play you. So just a little video of BIMX there. Remember, it is free. You just need to use your Archicad, just like you would be publishing it out through your publisher. And you can put that onto your phone, onto your customer's phone, perhaps. People are using it for their CVs, putting in a couple of their examples and a few of their models, even their company profile. Portfolio, a bunch of little models scattered around a little site, and then people can walk up to them using VR, and then showing, different presentation stuff on it. Got one last little video to show you before I let you all out, and you can all get back to work. This is just sort of a feature overview of everything, of what's new in Archicad 21. There's a lot in there. There's a lot of things we could have just spent hours on, like the stair tool, even the railing tool. We could have spent 3 hours just on that. So in here, there's a little preview of things. A couple of other new features that we didn't really talk about is the selecting stuff and then going save as or save selection as a PLN, just like you would do save selection as a mod. That's a option. And there's a couple of other bits and pieces to schedules and curtain walls and things like that. I'll leave you with this little video. So that was the Charles Perkins Centre. So if you want to go and have a look at it, the signature building for 21, it is in Sydney. Just a nice 20-minute walk, maybe even longer, just on the outskirts. Well, not outskirts of the CBD, pretty much. Yeah, done by FJMT, as mentioned earlier. Pretty much that's all I've got to show today. Thank you very much for sitting and listening for me for the last couple of hours. As I said, the training, all the files and all that stuff will be up on mycadimage.com later in a couple of weeks once we've added all these bits and pieces into it, cleaned up a few things. There's also going to be the recorded webinar, which you guys will all get, and that will also be uploaded there as well. Now, look, we do enjoy feedback as well, so if it's positive, negative, do let us know. A lot of the time, feedback could lead into new tools, perhaps additions to Archicad, which we could pass on to Graphisoft. And we do appreciate the ones who did come out to this year's road shows. We were around to them. We know a lot of you tried to get on to those things, but they were full because of the amount of people that were interested on those, which is really, really positive. Goes to show that we've got a strong community of Archicad users out there that are really eager and keen to learn the new stuff. If you've done those in the past and you've done the webinar this year, and you think either one's better, let us know. We're always welcome to change the way we can deliver these things and help you guys out at the end of the day. Yes, thank you all. If you have any questions, I believe there is that email. There is a webinar email you can send those through to, or you could go to nz.support@centralinnovation.com and log a little support ticket, maybe in the subject line saying webinar question or something like that, and either myself or Amy, who's covering support at the moment by herself, a new girl that we've got in, she could probably try and help you out, or Josh as well, who's having to help out while we're in our crazy busy period at the moment. Yes, thank you all, and have a good day. We'll see you later.